I don't know where the gun is.
Don't move! 58, you copy?
It was a quiet Sunday morning in Xenia, Ohio. The kind of early summer day when the air still carries a chill before the heat sets in, and the streets are mostly empty except for the sound of a few cars passing by. It was calm, almost peaceful, until the silence was broken by a desperate 911 call that would turn the morning into chaos. At 7:25 a.m., the dispatcher's headset came alive with a terrified voice. A man was out in the parking lot of an apartment complex near 190 Bellbrook Avenue, waving a gun, firing shots, and now he was pointing it directly at the caller. The caller was the apartment manager, trying to keep their voice steady while describing a situation spiraling out of control. On the other end of the radio, Xenia Green Central Communications transmitted the alert. Officers rolled out immediately. For the residents nearby, it started as a faint echo of sirens, but for the officers, it was a call that could change their lives in seconds. As the patrol cars turned onto Bellbrook Avenue, the complex came into view. Rows of beige apartments, cars neatly parked, morning light reflecting off windshields. But the peace didn't match what was coming through the radio. The suspect was armed, mobile, and unpredictable. The first two officers stepped out, eyes scanning, hands near their holsters. The third officer pulled in seconds later. Then he appeared, 23-year-old Kyle Eugene Berry, rounding the corner of the apartment buildings. He wasn't hiding, he wasn't confused or running away. He was walking with purpose, and in his hand, glinting in the sunlight, was a pistol. The officers called out immediately, their voices firm, calm, commanding, "Drop the weapon, drop the gun." But Berry didn't drop it. Instead, he raised it, his movement slow, deliberate, and terrifyingly confident. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. The apartment manager who had called 911 was still in the parking lot and started running for cover, her footsteps echoing against the pavement as she rushed into the building. The officers held their ground, guns drawn, continuing to yell commands, trying to de-escalate, trying to make him stop before it was too late. But Kyle Berry wasn't listening. He pointed his gun directly at the officers. For people who've never been in that moment, it's impossible to understand what it feels like when someone aims a weapon at you from only a few yards away. There's no time to think, no room for hesitation. A decision has to be made. Right then, right there. And that's when it happened. Shots rang out, echoing across the lot, bouncing off concrete walls and car doors. It was over in seconds, but those seconds felt like forever. When the smoke cleared, Kyle Berry was on the ground, injured but alive. The pistol, later identified as a Kimber semi-automatic handgun, lay beside him. The same weapon that had just turned a quiet morning into a war zone was now silent. The officers called it in immediately, their voices tense but controlled, reporting that the suspect was down and requesting medics. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They treated Berry at the scene and then transported him to the hospital. His injuries were serious, but not fatal. Against all odds, he survived. Later that week, he was released from the hospital and booked into the Greene County Jail. His bond was set at $500,000, and he now faced 2 counts of felonious assault, with more charges expected once the case reached the grand jury. For the officers, it was another day that ended with a life or death decision. But those moments don't leave easily. They stay in your mind. The sound of shouting, the flash of the gun, the The thought that any wrong move could have meant someone else's funeral. And for the residents who watched it unfold from behind their curtains, it was a morning they would never forget. They would remember the sound of gunfire echoing through their homes, the police yelling commands, and the sudden, shocking quiet that followed. As the sun climbed higher over Xenia that morning, the flashing lights faded, the crime scene tape went up, and life slowly started to return to normal. Cars moved again, people went to work, but something had changed. The space between those apartment buildings now carried an invisible weight, a reminder of how fast normal can vanish. Kyle Berry, 23 years old, was no longer just another name in a police report. He became another chapter in the growing list of small-town tragedies, moments that start as a single call